The night was calm and quiet, and the human, Ethan, was sitting alone in his small house at the edge of the forest. He was drinking warm tea and trying to relax after a long day outside. Only the sound of wind moving through the trees could be heard. Nothing felt strange, nothing felt dangerous. Everything seemed normal until he heard it, a soft knock on his door. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it sounded weak. Almost like someone touching the door with the last bit of strength they had. Ethan sat up straight. His heart beat a little faster. No one came to his house this late. Especially not in this lonely area. He waited for a second knock. And then he heard it again, a softer, slower tap, like someone was about to fall. He walked to the door carefully, wondering if it was an injured animal or maybe a lost traveler. When he put his hand on the handle, he felt a strange chill run through his body. Something didn't feel right. Slowly, he opened the door. That's when his breath stopped. A woman stood there, but she was not human. Her skin glowed faint blue, her hair looked like silver threads, and her eyes were half open, struggling to stay awake. She wore torn clothes, and her body was shaking. She looked painfully thin, as if she hadn't eaten in days. She lifted her head slightly, looked at him with fading eyes, and whispered with a trembling voice, "I'm so hungry." And before Ethan could say anything, she collapsed forward, falling directly into his arms. He caught her quickly, shocked. Her body was ice cold, colder than anything he had ever felt. Her breathing was shallow, almost disappearing. He carried her inside and laid her on the couch. Her fingers twitched weakly, and strange glowing marks on her arms pulsed slowly like dying lights. Hey, stay with me," Ethan said, trying not to panic. He rushed to bring water and a blanket. But when he touched her face, he felt fear. It wasn't just hunger. She looked like she was running for her life. Outside, a sudden crack echoed through the woods. Ethan froze, his head turned toward the window. For a moment, he thought he saw a shadow moving between the trees. Something tall, something watching. The forest went completely silent after that, too silent. Like the night itself was holding its breath. He locked the door quickly, then returned to the alien woman. Her breathing was uneven, her body shaking. She tried to open her eyes again, but failed. Ethan gently lifted her head and gave her a little water. She swallowed it like she had been dying of thirst. "It's okay, you're safe now," he whispered. Hoping she could somehow understand him, she opened her eyes just enough to see his face. And in that moment, fear flashed inside them. She tried to speak, her lips trembling, but the words broke into gasps. They, she whispered. Then her voice faded completely. She stopped talking and fell back into unconsciousness. Ethan felt a deep worry rising. Whoever they were, she was terrified of them. Another sound came from outside. This time a heavy thud. Ethan's heart jumped. He walked slowly to the window and peeked through the curtains. The dark forest looked normal, but the air felt wrong. He could sense something standing out there, hidden in the shadows, watching his house. Watching her, he stepped back, trying to stay calm. He didn't know what was happening. He didn't know who she was. But he knew one thing. She needed help, and whoever was out there. They weren't here to help. He sat beside her again, wrapping the blanket around her thin body. Her hands shook even in her sleep, like she was still running in her dreams. Ethan could feel how scared she must have been before reaching his door. It made his chest tighten. "Why my house?" he whispered quietly. "Why did you come here?" But of course, she couldn't answer. The room grew colder, the silence deeper, and the fear stronger. Ethan kept listening for every little sound, every movement outside. He didn't know it yet. But this moment, this simple knock on his door, had just changed his entire life. And somewhere in the darkness, something growled softly, like a warning or a promise. The night was far from over, For hours. Ethan sat beside the unconscious alien woman, listening to every strange sound outside. He didn't sleep. He didn't move far. He just stayed close in case she woke up scared or in pain. The night felt longer than any night he had ever lived, and the silence felt heavy. Like the world was holding a secret it didn't want to reveal. Finally, just before dawn, she moved. Her fingers curled weakly. Her chest rose a little faster. Ethan leaned forward, worried but also relieved. She opened her eyes slowly. Blinking as if the light hurt her, she looked confused. Frightened and lost. When she saw him, she jerked back in fear, pressing herself against the couch like a cornered animal. Her breath turned sharp and fast, and her glowing eyes widened with panic. She looked ready to run, even though her body had no strength left. "It's okay," Ethan said gently, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe. No one will hurt you here." His calm voice made her freeze. She stared at him for a long moment, trying to understand his words, or maybe trying to understand his intentions. Her lips trembled, and she whispered softly, "Where am I?" "You're in my home," he said softly. "You collapsed at my door. You said you were hungry." When she heard the word hungry, her eyes lowered in shame. She held her stomach like the memory hurt. Ethan stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen, and brought back a bowl of warm soup. He placed it in front of her carefully, not getting too close. She stared at the bowl like she wasn't sure if it was real. Then she picked it up with shaking hands and took a small sip. The moment the warm food touched her tongue, her eyes filled with tears. She started eating, but she ate slowly, almost painfully slow. As if afraid the food might disappear if she took too much, Ethan sat quietly, watching her. He didn't speak, didn't rush her. He could tell she hadn't eaten properly in days. Maybe longer. Her skin looked pale, her cheeks sunken, and the strange glowing marks along her arms flickered weakly, like dying light struggling to stay alive after finishing half the bowl. She put it down with shaking hands. She looked exhausted, like eating had used the last of her strength. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice tiny and full of fear. "What's your name?" Ethan asked gently, hoping to learn at least something. She looked away, her expression pained. I cannot tell," she whispered. "If I do, they will find you too." This made Ethan's heart drop. He leaned forward slightly. "Who will find me?" She shook her head hard, her silver hair falling over her face. I cannot say. But they are searching for me. They follow scent, sound, fear, everything." Her voice cracked. "If they find me, they will kill you." Ethan felt a strange mix of fear and anger. Not at her, but at whoever had hurt her this badly. "You're safe here," he said firmly. "No one is going to take you." At his words, she looked up with disbelief, like she had never heard such reassurance in her life. Her hands clenched the blanket close to her chest. Why would you help me?" she asked, her voice small. Humans do not trust my kind." "Maybe," Ethan said softly. "But I'm not like those humans." She stared at him for a long moment, studying his face, trying to understand his kindness. Slowly, her breathing calmed, and she sat more comfortably, though she still seemed ready to run if needed. Then suddenly, she grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes were wide with fear. "You must not open the door," she whispered urgently. "Not for anyone. Not until sunrise." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "Why?" "They hunt in the dark," she whispered. "They follow me. They are close." Just then, as if her words summoned them, a loud crack echoed outside the house. Ethan and the alien woman both froze. Her glowing eyes widened, and she whispered, "They found me." Ethan stood up. Trying to stay brave, he moved toward the window. But she reached out and grabbed his hand again. Please don't go near," she begged, her voice shaking. "If they see you with me, they will mark you too." Ethan looked at her terrified face. Then at the dark window, the night felt alive with danger. He could hear faint footsteps, slow and heavy, circling the house. He stepped back and locked every door and window he could. She pulled her knees to her chest, trembling. "I should not be here. I bring danger," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. Ethan sat beside her again, close enough so she could feel he wasn't leaving her. "You came because you needed help," he said softly. "And you're staying because I won't let anyone hurt you." For the first time, she looked at him not with fear, but with a little hope, a silent hope she had not felt in years. Outside, the footsteps stopped, but the danger did not fade. The shadows waited, watching, searching. And inside the house, the human and the alien woman sat together in fear and silence, both knowing the night was far from over. The footsteps outside faded with the coming light, but the fear inside the small house stayed heavy like a thick fog. Ethan waited until the sun began to rise before he finally relaxed his shoulders a little. The alien woman sat curled on the couch, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her glowing eyes looked tired, scared, and full of secrets she didn't want to speak. Ethan knew she was hiding something big, something dangerous. But he also knew she needed safety more than anything right now. He moved slowly, placing a cup of warm tea beside her. She stared at it for a long moment before whispering, "Thank you," almost too softly to hear. "You don't have to tell me everything," Ethan said gently, sitting a little distance away so she wouldn't feel trapped. "But I need to know enough to help you." She looked at him like she wasn't sure if she deserved help at all. Her fingers shook as she touched the cup. "If I speak, you will be afraid of me," she whispered. "Everyone is. Try me," Ethan said calmly. "I've already seen strange things tonight." She took a slow breath, gathering courage she didn't know she had. "My name is Lyra," she whispered, giving him the first truth. "And I am not from the peaceful stars. I am from the hunted ones." Ethan listened quietly, not interrupting her, not judging, just giving her space. Lyra continued. "My people lived in quiet worlds far from humans. We were simple, gentle, and we didn't fight. But then they came." Her voice shook as she said the word. The hunters." Ethan felt his heart beat faster. "Who are they?" "They are creatures born for tracking," she whispered. "They smell fear, chase weakness, and feed on suffering. They destroyed our colonies, captured our families, used us like animals." Her eyes filled with tears. "I watched them take my mother, my brother, everyone." Ethan felt pain tighten in his chest. He didn't know what to say. How do you comfort someone who lost an entire world? Lyra wiped her tears with trembling hands. I ran until my feet bled, until I couldn't breathe. I hid in caves, in shadows, in empty places. They chased me across forests, across snow, across ruins." She swallowed hard. "I ate whatever I could find. Sometimes nothing for days." Ethan understood now why she was so thin, why she collapsed at his door, why she whispered, "I'm so hungry," before fainting. "They hunt my kind like trophies," Lyra said, her voice cracking. "But I escaped. I am the last of my family, maybe the last of my whole group." Ethan moved a little closer, very slowly. "So when you came to my door, you were running from them?" She nodded. "They followed my scent. They followed the sound of my breath. They almost caught me." She looked up at him with fear in her glowing eyes. "If you had opened the door even 1 minute later, I would not be alive." Ethan felt a chill run through him. He remembered the shadows outside, the heavy footsteps circling his house, the way the night felt alive with danger. "Are they still looking for you?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Lyra whispered. "They will look until they find me. They do not stop. They do not sleep. They do not forget." She clutched the blanket tighter. "And now, you are marked too." Ethan blinked. "Marked?" "They saw your light," she whispered. When you helped me, when you carried me inside. Hunters sense kindness like other creatures sense heat. It makes them angry. Ethan let out a slow breath, trying to process everything. He wasn't afraid for himself, but he was afraid for her. The thought of those creatures chasing her made his blood burn with protective anger. Lyra looked at him again, her voice small. I should leave. If I stay, they will come. They will hurt you. No, Ethan said firmly. You're not going anywhere. She stared at him, shocked. But you came to me because you had no one else, Ethan said gently. I'm not sending you back into danger. Her eyes filled with tears again. But this time, the tears felt different, softer, warmer, almost full of hope. Why? Why are you being kind to me? She whispered, No one ever is. Because kindness is not weakness, Ethan replied. And you deserve help, Lyra covered her mouth, crying quietly, letting the truth she had carried alone for so long finally escape her heart. Ethan sat beside her and let her cry without touching her or rushing her. Just being there, just giving her something she had never been given before, safety. Outside, the morning sun rose, but danger did not disappear. The hunters were still out there, still searching, still moving through the shadows, but now Lyra wasn't alone. And Ethan wasn't stepping back. He had chosen to protect her, even if it meant facing the darkness himself. When the sun finally rose, Ethan knew he had to check outside. The night had been filled with strange footsteps and heavy shadows, and his mind refused to rest until he saw what was really out there. Lyra watched him nervously from the couch, her hands clenched around the blanket. Her glowing eyes filled with fear. Stay inside, Ethan said gently. I'll just take a quick look. No, Lyra whispered urgently, shaking her head. It is not safe. They may still be near. I won't go far, he promised. But I need to know what we're dealing with. Lyra looked like she wanted to stop him, but she was too weak to stand. Her voice trembled. Please, be careful. Ethan stepped outside, and the cold morning air touched his skin like a warning. The forest was too quiet. No birds, no wind, no movement. As if the trees themselves were holding their breath. He walked slowly, scanning the ground. And then he saw it, the first footprint. It was huge, almost twice the size of a human foot, with long claw marks stretching deep into the soil. Ethan crouched, touching the edge of one mark. The ground was torn, like something strong and fast had been running close to his house. The tracks led in a circle around the building. Twisting, pacing, searching, he felt his heart tighten. Lyra had been telling the truth, but then he saw something worse. Something that made his breath stop. There were multiple sets of footprints. Not one hunter, not two, but at least three. They had surrounded his home for hours, watching from different angles, searching for a way inside. One print was so deep, it looked like the creature had stood there for a long time. Waiting, listening, Ethan swallowed hard. His hands trembled slightly. He followed the trail a little further and saw broken branches, scraped bark, and claw marks high up on the trees, as if the hunters had climbed or leaped silently through the forest, hunting from above as well as on the ground. A cold shiver crawled down his spine. He turned back to the house quickly. Every instinct screamed that the danger was not over. The moment he stepped inside, Lyra sat up straight, fear on her face as soon as she saw his expression. What did you see? She whispered. Ethan hesitated, not wanting to scare her more, but she deserved the truth. You were right, he said softly. They were here. Her hands tightened around the blanket. How many? Too many, Ethan said. They circled the house all night. Lyra's eyes filled with fear and guilt. I brought them to you, she whispered, her voice shaking. This is my fault. No, Ethan said firmly, sitting down beside her. The ones who hurt you are the ones to blame. Not you. She shook her head weakly. They do not give up. They follow until they kill. And now. Now they will target you too. Ethan took a deep breath. Trying to stay calm. Then we'll deal with it together, he said. Lyra looked at him like she couldn't believe anyone would stand beside her. You do not understand, she whispered. Hunters smell fear. They chase it if they feel courage. They attack even harder. Ethan gave a small, tired smile. Good thing I'm stubborn, he said gently. Lyra blinked, confused, then gave a tiny smile back. The first small brightness on her face since she came, but the fear quickly returned. Did they leave? She asked softly. For now, Ethan said, but they didn't go far. Lyra's glowing marks flickered weakly when they stopped moving. It means they are planning, she whispered. Hunters wait until the moment you feel safe, then they strike. Ethan felt a chill. He remembered the heavy footprint that stayed in one place for a long time. Watching, waiting, he stood and checked all doors and windows again, reinforcing them as best he could. Lyra watched quietly, and her eyes softened. Why do you protect me? She asked suddenly. You barely know me. Ethan paused. Looking at her. Maybe, he said softly. But you came to my door because you had nowhere else to go. You were starving, scared, alone. And no one deserves to be hunted. Her eyes watered again. But this time they were tears of something new, something like hope. I never thought humans could be like you, she whispered. Kind, gentle, brave. He sat beside her again. Rest, he said. You need strength. We both do. But resting was difficult when fear filled the air like a thick shadow. Lyra closed her eyes, but her body stayed tense. Listening for danger, Ethan stayed awake, watching over her. Listening to every sound outside as the day went on. The forest remained quiet, too quiet. The silence felt unnatural, like the hush before a storm. Lyra whispered softly, They are not far. They wait for night. Ethan looked out the window. Fear tightening in his chest. The tracks told the story clearly. The hunters were not just searching. They were circling, planning, waiting for darkness to return. And when night came, they would come with it. The day passed slowly, every hour filled with quiet fear. Ethan checked the windows again and again, not because he doubted himself, but because he knew the hunters were patient. They could wait hours, even days, before striking. Lyra stayed on the couch, wrapped in the blanket, her glowing eyes watching every movement he made, like she expected danger to break through the walls any second. As the sun touched the late afternoon sky, painting the world in faint gold, Lyra whispered softly, You should let me go. Ethan turned quickly. No, he said firmly. I'm not letting you walk into danger, but if I stay, the hunters will come back, Lyra said, her voice trembling. They will hurt you. I cannot let that happen. Ethan took a slow breath, choosing his next words carefully. Lyra, I'm not scared of them. She shook her head. You should be, she whispered. They destroyed my world. They took everything from me. You cannot fight them. Ethan walked closer and sat beside her, leaving a gentle distance so she didn't feel trapped. Maybe I can't fight them, he said softly. But I can protect you. Lyra stared at him, her eyes full of confusion, fear, and something else, something like disbelief. Why? She whispered. Why protect someone like me? You do not know if I am dangerous. You do not know if I bring more trouble. You're not dangerous, Ethan said calmly. You were starving, terrified, and alone. If you wanted to hurt me, you wouldn't have collapsed at my door. Lyra looked away, tears gathering again. I am not used to kindness, she whispered. My people did not receive it often. Ethan softened his voice. Well, you're getting it now. The words hit her deeper than he expected. Her shoulders shook as she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. If the hunters smell your protection, they will target you, she said. They hate when someone helps their prey. Then let them hate, Ethan said with a quiet strength. I won't let them take you. for the first time since she arrived. Lyra looked like she believed him, even if just a little. Her glowing marks flickered gently, not with fear, but with something like warmth, as evening approached. The sky darkened faster than usual, heavy clouds rolling in from the forest. The wind began to pick up, brushing against the walls with slow, cold fingers. Lyra stiffened immediately, her breath catching. "They move with the wind," she whispered. "When the air changes, it means they are close." Ethan stood, closing the curtains tightly. "They won't get inside," he said. "Not while I'm here." A faint rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. But Lyra knew it wasn't thunder. "They are calling," she whispered. "Hunters communicate with sound you cannot fully hear, low, deep, like the earth is shaking." Ethan listened, and though he didn't hear the full sound, he felt a strange vibration under the floorboards. Just a faint trembling. Lyra curled tighter into the blanket. "I should leave now," she said, forcing the words out even though she was terrified. "If I run far enough, they will follow me and leave you alone." Ethan turned sharply. "No," he said, "you're not leaving." She shook her head, her fear rising. "You do not understand. They will come through the walls, the roof, the windows. They never stop. I cannot let you die because of me." Ethan walked to her and kneeled so she could see his eyes clearly. "Lyra," he said softly but with strong conviction, "I choose to protect you, not because I have to, and not because you owe me anything. I choose it because it's the right thing." Lyra stared at him, her breath shaking. "No one has ever chosen me," she whispered, the words breaking inside her. "Not my people, not anyone." "Well, someone does now," Ethan said gently. "And that someone is me." Her glowing eyes softened with emotion too strong to hide. She lowered her head, letting her silver hair fall like a curtain. "You are kind," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Too kind." Ethan placed the blanket around her shoulders more securely. "You're safe with me," he said. "I promise." Suddenly, a loud thud echoed against the side of the house. Lyra gasped, clutching the blanket. Ethan stood up fast, moving toward the sound. Another thud followed, heavy, deliberate, like something testing the walls. Lyra trembled. "They know," she whispered. "They know you chose me." Ethan looked around for anything he could use as a weapon, his jaw tight, his body ready. "Then they'll learn something else," he said quietly. "I'm not letting them take you." The house grew colder, the air thick with danger outside. The shadows moved again, slow and patient. Lyra's glowing marks dimmed with fear. But she looked at Ethan with new trust, fragile but real. "Please, stay close," she whispered. Ethan nodded, stepping beside her, protecting her without hesitation. Night wasn't fully here yet, but the hunters were. And they were no longer just hunting Lyra. They were hunting the human who dared to protect her. Night fell like a heavy curtain, faster and darker than usual. Ethan closed every window, every lock, every crack where cold air could slip through. Lyra stayed near the center of the room, wrapped in the blanket, her glowing marks flickering like fading stars. The house felt smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves were afraid of what waited outside. The wind began to move strangely. Not like normal wind, it came in slow, uneven waves, as if something large was passing through the trees. Ethan felt his heart beat harder. He knew the hunters had returned. Lyra did too. Her breath came short and fast, her eyes wide with fear she couldn't hide. "They are close," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Too close." Ethan picked up the metal rod he kept for emergencies. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. A low growl echoed from the shadows outside, deep enough to make the floor tremble. Lyra flinched, pressing her back against the couch. "They are angry," she whispered. "They feel your courage, and they hate it." Ethan swallowed hard. "Good," he muttered. They can hate me all night, another growl joined the first. Then another, the sounds spread around the house. Circling them, surrounding them, trapping them in fear and darkness. Ethan felt sweat collect on his neck even though the air was freezing. Then came the first hit, thud. The wall shook, dust falling from the ceiling. Lyra gasped. Covering her mouth with her shaking hands, Ethan stepped closer to her, keeping himself between her and the wall. Thud. Thud. The hits came again, harder, angrier, like claws digging into wood, like fists made of stone punching through the boards. Lyra whispered, "They break walls. They break bones. They break everything." Ethan tightened his grip on the metal rod. "They won't break you," he said firmly. A sudden crash came from the back of the house. Glass shattered somewhere. Lyra cried out softly. Ethan spun around. "Searching the shadows, stay behind me," he repeated. Though his own voice shook, the lights flickered, once, twice. Then stayed on but weakly, like they too were scared. The room felt colder, the air heavier. Lyra's glowing marks dimmed until they were barely visible. Then Ethan saw it. A long twisted shadow stretched across the hallway, moving on the other side of the broken window. The shape was tall, too tall for any human, with long, sharp limbs dragging across the floor. The shadow moved smoothly, silently. Like water sliding across stone, Lyra covered her eyes, shaking. "They got inside," she whispered. "One of them is inside." Ethan felt fear hit him hard. But he forced himself to stay still, stay strong, stay focused. He took a slow step backwards, keeping Lyra behind him. "We're not dying tonight," he whispered under his breath. The shadow grew larger as something approached. A low growling breath filled the hallway, warm and disgusting, like rotting heat. Ethan raised the metal rod, his hands trembling but ready. A clawed hand reached around the corner, long and thin. Almost twice the length of Ethan's arm, the creature scraped its claws across the wall. Peeling wood like it was paper, Lyra whimpered behind Ethan, her glowing marks flickering weakly like they were fading out completely. The creature stepped into view, tall, thin, bones showing through leathery, dark skin. Glowing red eyes staring with hunger, its mouth opened in a silent snarl. Rows of sharp teeth glistening in the dim light. It stared at Ethan, first studying him, then slowly turned to Lyra. It had found its prey. Ethan stepped forward, putting himself directly between Lyra and the creature. "No," he said strongly, even though fear filled his entire body. "You're not touching her." The creature tilted its head, confused by his bravery. Then it growled a horrible, crawling sound that made the air vibrate. It lunged forward. Ethan swung the metal rod with all his strength. The hit connected with a loud crack. The creature stumbled back, hissing, its red eyes burning brighter with rage. Lyra gasped in shock. "You cannot fight them," she whispered desperately. "They don't feel pain. I don't care," Ethan growled. "I'm not letting it take you." The creature lunged again. This time faster. Ethan dodged, but the creature's claw sliced across his arm. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall, refusing to fail. Lyra cried out, trying to stand, but her legs were too weak. Another shadow moved outside the window. Another hunter climbing toward the house. Lyra whispered, "They are coming. More are coming. You cannot fight all of them." Ethan glanced back at her, his breathing sharp. "Then help me," he said. "Tell me what to do." Lyra's eyes widened. She had never been asked that before, never been trusted like that. Her glowing marks brightened weakly. I can distract them with my light," she whispered. "But it will hurt me." "Do it," Ethan said softly but urgently. "We survive together, or not at all." Lyra stood shakily, her body glowing brighter, the marks on her skin pulsing with painful energy. The creature hissed and turned its head sharply toward her light. "It's working," Ethan whispered, preparing his stance again, outside. Multiple shadows approached the house, growling louder, hungrier, inside. Ethan and Lyra stood together for the first time. And the battle for survival had just begun. The room glowed with Lyra's painful light, bright enough to push the shadows back. Bright enough to make the hunters hiss and retreat for a moment. Ethan stood in front of her, his injured arm bleeding, his breath heavy, but his eyes full of determination. For a few seconds, the world felt frozen. As if time itself was holding its breath, the leading hunter growled, its red eyes narrowing at Lyra's glow. Lyra trembled, her body shaking from the strain. Her light was beautiful but fragile, flickering like a candle fighting strong wind. "I cannot hold it," she whispered painfully. "It hurts." "Too much." Ethan took her hand quickly. "Just a little longer," he said softly. "We're almost through." But the hunters weren't waiting. The one inside the house crouched low, muscles tightening. And then it leaped forward with terrifying speed. Ethan pushed Lyra behind him and swung the metal rod again. The hit landed on the creature's jaw with a crack. And it fell back, but only for a second. It stood again, furious, outside. Two more hunters climbed through the broken window, their claws slicing into the wooden frame. Lyra gasped. "There are too many," she cried. "They will kill us, Ethan." "Please run." "Not without you," Ethan said. Louder this time, stronger. "I'm not leaving you." Lyra stared at him, tears forming. Her entire life she had run alone, survived alone, suffered alone. No one had ever stood in front of her like this. No one had ever chosen her. The truth broke inside her heart like light, breaking through darkness. The leading hunter screeched, a horrible sound that made the glass shake. It lunged again, but this time Ethan was faster. He grabbed a heavy lamp from the table and smashed it into the creature's head. Sparks flew, the creature stumbled. And Lyra's glow brightened again, reacting to Ethan's bravery. The two hunters at the window crawled forward, ready to attack, their red eyes locked on Lyra. Hungry, desperate, cruel, Lyra shut her eyes tightly, whispering something in her own alien language. A soft prayer drowned in fear. Ethan stepped in front of her again, bleeding, shaking, but unbroken. "You want her?" He yelled at the creatures. "You have to go through me." His voice filled the entire house, filled Lyra's heart, and even for a moment, filled the hunters with confusion. No prey had ever spoken to them like that. No prey had ever stood with such stubborn courage. Ethan swung the metal rod again, hitting another hunter in the shoulder. It snarled and slashed back, cutting Ethan's leg. He almost fell. But Lyra grabbed his arm, helping him stand. "Do not fall," she whispered, crying. "Please do not fall." "I'm not," he said through clenched teeth. "As long as you're here." "I'm not." Lyra's glowing marks flickered brighter and brighter until they formed a warm, beautiful blue light around her. Her fear turned into something new, strength born from his protection, courage born from his kindness. She stepped forward and placed her hand on Ethan's back, sending some of her energy into him. The hunters hissed, stepping back from the sudden brightness. The light from Lyra was no longer weak, no longer painful. It was powerful, full, alive, almost like a shield spreading through the room. Ethan felt warmth move through his body, his pain growing lighter, his breath steadying. He looked at her in shock. "Lyra, what is this?" He whispered. "My true light," she said softly. "I can only awaken it when I feel safe." Together, they stood in the center of the glowing room as the hunters backed away, confused and frightened by the brightness. The leading hunter screeched angrily, but the others began to retreat, dragging themselves back toward the window. The light was too much for them, too strong, too pure. One last screech echoed through the house. Then they disappeared into the dark forest, their shadows melting away in defeat. Silence filled the house, followed by Lyra collapsing into Ethan's chest. He caught her quickly, holding her carefully as her glowing marks dimmed to a soft, gentle light. "It's okay," he whispered. "They're gone. We're safe." Lyra looked up at him with tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. Her voice trembled with emotion too deep to hide. "Ethan," she whispered, "why did you do this for me?" "Because you needed someone," he said softly, brushing her hair away from her face. "And I was here." Lyra placed her hand on his chest, her fingers shaking. "I had no one. No home, no family," she whispered, "but you. You fed me, saved me, protected me." Her voice broke as she cried into him. "You are my only family now." Ethan held her tighter, his heart full. "And you," he whispered gently, "are not alone anymore." The night grew quiet, the danger gone, and in the soft glow of Lyra's fading light, two lonely souls finally found the home they never had, together.